Pomej. The Fog Murderer of Gliese, 1214b. Sherlock Holmes, The Galactic Cases, Episode 7. Based on the characters created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A Go Audio production. The exoplanet Gliese, 1214b, targeted by Ultimo 1 and located nearly 48 light-years from Earth, orbits the red dwarf GJ 1214 in just 38 hours in the constellation Ophiuchus. The red dwarf's radiation is 200 times weaker than that of the Sun. Its distance from its central star is approximately 2 million kilometres, and its mass is nearly 7 Earth masses, with a radius slightly more than 2.5 Earth radii. Thus, it's a super-Earth that humanity managed to colonise over 30 years ago with a good dozen young scientists at a research station, reported the robot Elmer. 30 years? Repeated Sherlock Holmes. Then the young scientists must have multiplied by now and presumably account for at least 24 in the population statistics. I'm not aware of anything like that. Normally, scientifically minded people don't have such animalistic urges, Elmer remarked casually. I know quite different specimens, Dr. Watson interjected into the discussion. A friend of mine, Professor William Alexander Exeter, is a passionate researcher and simultaneously a father of 5 children. You shouldn't draw conclusions about everyone based on one of your friends, cautioned Holmes, who was retrieving a steaming sandwich from the vending machine, which looked like a one-armed bandit from ancient casinos, and hungrily bit into it. Oh, really? I know of other researchers, not personally, mind you, but through hearsay, who have been just as enthusiastic about bringing children into the world, the doctor insisted stubbornly, despite their burning passion for science. Perhaps, Holmes mumbled through his mouthful. The possible reluctance to procreate among researchers on Gliese U1214b isn't due to their scientific drive, but rather the prevailing heat there. Given its proximity to that foreign sun, it must be scorching hot on that super-Earth. Am I right, Elmer? Only between 120 and 280 degrees Celsius, Elmer noted. However, this problem was solved right from the start with a sophisticated cooling system for the inhabited surface, which covers barely 1 square kilometre. Then another reason occurs to me why you don't know anything about reproduction, my dear mechanical friend. They simply kept quiet about the population growth. Holmes dabbed his mouth, which morphed into a crooked smile. The scientist didn't feel it necessary to inform you or anyone else about it. I must protest most strongly against that, Mr. Holmes. It is absolutely not customary to withhold reports about such important details. Now the usually stoic robot seemed to put a touch of agitation into his voice. Calm down, Elmer, Dr. Watson advised him. Otherwise you might blow a fuse. It's quite a natural human quirk to simply keep certain things under wraps, for whatever reason. Some people even find it exciting to keep their little secrets. Following your logic, these little secrets must already be up to 29 years old. Yes, why not? Dr. Watson gestured. The eldest one is 29, and the others are arranged like organ pipes in age and height. In that case, one can hardly speak of little secrets anymore, Elmer objected sternly. We'll all be able to verify that personally when we land. Holmes placated the budding dispute between human and machine. Well, I would simply find it against nature if we were to find only 12 people there, the doctor persisted. In that case, humans would be a flawed design. Do you know what the philosopher Émile Michel Cioran once said? Holmes whispered to him. Dr. Watson hesitated for a moment and then freely admitted, I've never heard of him at all. Yes, he won't be born until after our time, in 1911 to be precise. But I read about him in the ship's library. It's truly fascinating to research what the future holds. It never gets dull. He said, in allowing humans to exist, nature committed far more than a calculation error. It committed an attack upon itself. Therefore, my dear Watson, always consider something unnatural when it comes to human beings. All three arrived on the bridge at precisely the moment when First Officer Tornot asked Captain Decker why they were in such a hurry to reach the exoplanet. Decker stretched out in his command chair and gazed through the massive front window at a planet almost completely shrouded in white. The research reports have stopped coming in over the past 2 months, but instead we received a request for immediate transfer. One of the scientists apparently wants to leave as quickly as possible. "Aha!" Dr. Watson blurted out. "I've got an inkling why that might be." "Don't start again with that nonsense about the lack of reproduction," Elmer warned. "I think," Holmes pondered, "after 30 years, one simply wants to return home, even though, after such a long time, it's quite different from the one held in one's memories." "I completely agree with you," Tornot nodded. "One would need a time machine to recover the old, familiar homeland." The Ultimo One plunged into the dense white atmosphere of Gliese 1214b as if diving into candy floss. After a brief descent, the sky cleared and a gigantic tower came into view, to which she docked. "Isn't such a massive structure rather excessive for a small research station?" marvelled Holmes. The basic structure of the tower was already there. They just needed to equip it with an airlock and a glass gondola lift to get down. "That means the planet is inhabited by indigenous people," deduced Dr. Watson. "They were," Decker corrected. "They went extinct 1 million Earth years ago, as was discovered, and they were giants, a full 7 meters tall, as fossilized skeletons revealed." The captain tasked Tornot with standing in for him during his absence, and descended with Holmes, Dr. Watson and Elmer in the glass gondola along the side of the giant tower down to the surface of the super-Earth. Upon disembarking, they were met with a veritable hothouse of sticky, humid air. "We should have put on tropical clothing," Holmes interjected, loosening his green brocade tie slightly. "That's just the stark contrast to our air conditioning on board," Decker reassured him, gleaming in his gold uniform just as brightly as Elmer. "That's why these 38 degrees Celsius feel so tropical to you." "There's a scientist approaching to greet us," announced the robot. A petite woman in a cognac-coloured trouser suit came running eagerly towards the visitors and gasped. "Finally, a glimmer of hope." "Dr. Wemzig," recognised Decker, who had reviewed the researchers' files during the journey here. "You're the station director." "Not anymore." She ran her hand self-consciously through her short brunette hair. "I was voted out, by 6 votes to 4. "I'm sorry to hear that," the captain said sympathetically. "So there must have been one abstention." "No, actually, due to the death of one of our members." She looked down at the ground, affected. "May I ask what caused the member's death?" inquired Holmes, who immediately caught the scent of an unnatural death. After Decker had introduced him and the doctor, the petite, even fragile-looking woman readily provided information. "You see, we've painstakingly wrested this piece of land from nature here, and one of us, Dr. Langdon, his name was, wanted to expand it further. He set out with a robot a month ago, and the robot returned alone." "What's that? You and the others didn't even think it worth the trouble to verify his death in person?" Decker said, his friendly tone changing. "But Captain," she smiled weakly, "why should we doubt the robot's report?" "I want to speak to the others immediately. Call a meeting." Enraged, Decker stomped towards the station's building complex, which looked like something from the brutalist era. Exposed concrete with small windows, sharp edges, and few curves had been plonked onto a concrete platform in a barren landscape. A few green-leaved giant sequoias stood scattered around this building, like guardians of a long-forgotten time. Inside the concrete block, 4 robots of varying sizes, some already showing signs of rust, were loitering like lifeless sculptures along the wall of a long corridor, but they snapped to attention as the 4 humans and Elmer walked past them. Dr. Wemzig led their guests into a conference room where 12 chairs were arranged around a round table. "We'll all manage with the 12 seats," she announced with outstretched arms, "as some of our group are still asleep." Disapprovingly, Decker sat down with his crew. It was clearly visible that he was holding back a critical comment. Gradually, several rather grumpy-looking people drifted in to take their places at the table, whom Dr. Wemzig introduced. "This is Dr. Crixton, our geologist. Here comes Dr. Dudley, our meteorologist. There comes Dr. Maxwell, our chemist. And here is Dr. Cloris, our human geneticist. That completes our waking party. The other 6 doctors prefer to rest until lunchtime. And one will rest until Judgment Day," Holmes reminded them, earning icy glares from the awake female scientists. "Dr. Langdon, I heard. What was his speciality?" "He was our archaeologist," answered the blonde Dr. Cloris, who was wearing a purple dress. "And I, for one, advised him against expanding the conquered territory." "Yes, but he never listened to anyone," Dr. Maxwell snapped, first smoothing down her yellow blouse, which she wore with light brown trousers, then running her hand through her black hair. "And he always knew everything better than everyone else." Dr. Crixton and Dr. Dudley, both wearing black overalls, seemed to be the only ones putting on mournful expressions, and remained silent. Their female colleagues had also calmed down again and were staring into space. They must all have been in their 50s, with the women appearing 10 years younger thanks to cosmetics, whilst the men looked 10 years older due to their greying heads. After a while, Holmes felt compelled to comment on the silence of all those present with his diagnosis. Silence is the classic defence against emotions. No one contradicted him. With suppressed anger, Decker cleared his throat and began his investigation. "First of all, I want to know who is in charge of the station, and then I want to speak with the robot who returned without Dr. Langdon." Dr. Maxwell raised both hands. "I am the new head of the research station, and I shall summon the robot straight away. Claxton." After just a few seconds, a highly polished robot, 2 meters tall, entered the room and bowed politely. "You called, Doctor?" "This gentleman in the ostentatious gold uniform over there is Captain Decker from the Ultimo 1, and he wishes to know about your excursion with Dr. Langdon," she instructed him, pointing her thumb towards Decker in a slightly dismissive manner. Claxton bowed to him as well, and began to speak in a tinny voice. "We ventured out precisely 1 average Earth month, that is 30 days, ago into the wilderness, which means into territory that has not yet been explored. Dr. Langdon was wearing his heat protection suit. After a short march, we came upon a large structure built by the indigenous inhabitants. Dr. Langdon showed professional interest in it, took notes, and instructed me to extend the cooling system to reach that location, which I did." "And then he died?" Decker interjected. "No, not yet. 3 days later, we set out for the structure again. Dr. Langdon needlessly wore his heat protection suit once more and instructed me to fetch him a bottle of water. Upon my return, I found him dead in front of the structure, which was shrouded in a cloud of mist. Therefore, I removed his heat protection suit, returned to the station alone with it, and reported to Dr. Wemzig, who was then voted out as director." "But why did you simply leave the dead man there, Claxton?" Sherlock Holmes questioned him. "Why didn't you bury him?" "Because I wasn't programmed for burial procedures. Besides, only useful members should be in the station, and a dead person isn't useful, so I left him there." "Unbelievable!" Dr. Watson exclaimed indignantly. "What morally dubious individual programmed you like this in the first place, Claxton?" "The IT specialist, Dr. Snorat, who is currently deigning to sleep," replied the robot. "I think it's best if we proceed to the scene of the incident," Holmes suggested, already rising from his chair. "Fine by me, but count us out. We're indispensable here," Dr. Maxwell made clear with a dismissive wave of her arm, and leant back demonstratively, folding her arms across her chest. Decker sprang up energetically, knocking over his chair, and hissed as he left. "We'll manage perfectly well without your help." So Holmes, Dr. Watson, Decker, and Elmer set off behind Claxton towards the building in question. "That's quite an odd assortment of personalities," Decker muttered after leaving the station. "Downright antisocial. Great minds were often not very sociable towards their fellow human beings," explained Dr. Watson. Just think of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who left all 5 children he had with the maid at the Foundling Hospital. That's quite a remarkable fact, considering this moral philosopher's humanitarian principles and his views on educational reform. They are simply cold-blooded scientists who have no qualms about sacrificing themselves for new discoveries, explained Holmes along the way. A narrow trail of individually laid concrete paving stones, which led to an impressive giant sequoia forest. Therefore, they also have no hesitation in sacrificing their fellow humans if it serves their cause or their own interests. Despite the cooling system beneath the paving stones already being operated by the polished robot, the humid and oppressive heat gave the men a sweaty march, and Elmer remarked that it would have been better if the people had changed their clothes. "There's no time for that, Elmer. We need to reach a conclusion as quickly as possible," Decker dismissed. "Since Dr. Langdon's death, I have extended the cooling system beyond the structure according to his instructions," explained Claxton. "Therefore, a person can easily tolerate the residual heat here in the surroundings. The complete absence of wind and any sounds from birds or insects constantly reminded the group that they were wandering in an alien world." "Are there any wild animals here, Claxton?" Dr. Watson ventured to ask. "Just the usual worms in the ground," he reassured them. Above them stretched a vanilla-coloured sky, and it took barely half an hour before they reached a clearing amidst the mighty trees, where the structure stood in its centre. It was a roughly 25-metre-tall open book carved in stone, standing upright with its spine facing them. As they all walked around it, they saw between its opened covers the corpse of the archaeologist, which, naturally, lay before them in an advanced state of decay. "I'm sorry, but in this state of decomposition, I'm afraid I can no longer determine the cause of death," Dr. Watson admitted. "Claxton, did you notice anything unusual when you removed Dr. Langdon's heat protection suit?" inquired Holmes, who covered his nose with a handkerchief to shield himself from the overwhelming stench of decay. The robot responded spontaneously, "Yes." "And what might that be, if I may ask?" "The suit had been damaged. Apparently someone had cut through the breathing tube, but I repaired the spot immediately. Unfortunately, too late for Dr. Langdon." "And did you report this to Dr. Wemzig?" Decker wanted to know. "No, because she didn't ask me about it. The people at the research station don't speak to me as politely as you gentlemen do," Claxton complained. "I simply informed her of the doctor's death, to which she replied what a great loss it was." "Was anyone else present when you delivered the sad news, dear Claxton?" Holmes inquired. "Yes, Dr. Maxwell was there, who immediately claimed that Dr. Wemzig was responsible for the loss and should step down, which she did." The robot reeled off. "Subsequently, Dr. Maxwell was elected director by a narrow majority, which seemed to please her greatly. And after that, everyone just went back to business as usual, did they?" Decker said irritably. "Yes," confirmed the robot. "Mo, and did anything change under the new leadership?" inquired Holmes. "Yes, Dr. Maxwell immediately issued new schedules for her colleagues, whilst forgetting about the maintenance of the other robots. She only maintained me, whilst my 4 colleagues are rusting away at the station, yet still have to carry out their duties. Soon they won't be able to do so anymore." "Thank you for this information, Claxton," said Decker. "Bury Dr. Langdon's remains with all due dignity." The robot obeyed, digging a grave in the loose earth with its mighty hands, in which it laid the sorrowful human remains to rest. His fellow robot, Elmer, meanwhile drew the men's attention to the numerous characters in the open stone book. "Just look, sir, at the inscriptions found in this andesite structure. Looks like cuneiform." "I can't read that," Decker admitted to him, "and I'm not interested in it at all." "Well, that would have interested Dr. Langdon much more," remarked Holmes. "Looking at the size of this monument, I would guess it was built for religious reasons. Whenever something grand was built in the past, religion was usually the reason for it." "You're forgetting that the natives weren't human beings, so they certainly didn't have any religion, as that's something typically human," Decker mused. "Perhaps it's just a simple advertising column with a marketing message," suggested Dr. Watson. "Maybe for a beverage or a useful machine. That would also be something typically human, mentioned Holmes. As typically human as murder. Who could benefit from the archaeologist's death? Decker posed the essential question. And does his death have anything to do with the discovery of this stone monument? Which of the researchers might have been helped by Dr. Langdon's journey to the great beyond? That's where Dr. Maxwell stood out, Holmes interjected. However, the lady might have merely seized the favourable opportunity for her social advancement to head of the station without being the cause of it. Decker nodded. A mere opportunist who didn't need to get her hands dirty personally. Cutting through a breathing tube doesn't require much physical strength, Dr. Watson reminded them, and could easily be done by a delicate woman. I don't find this lady to be particularly delicate, Holmes objected, though it certainly wouldn't have exceeded her physical strength. No, just a transgression of morals, and those aren't particularly well developed among the scientists here anyway, Decker snapped irritably. If I could, I'd send them all back to their homeland straight away, specifically to the part that's already deteriorated into a prison. We must proceed very diplomatically, Captain, Holmes warned. On one hand, to avoid driving the murderer to commit another crime, and on the other hand, to solve this case as quickly as possible and get away from here, as this natural heat doesn't agree well with an Englishman accustomed to rainy weather. Speaking of leaving, Dr. Watson interjected, who actually applied for a transfer, Captain? Decker pondered briefly and wondered. It was Dr. Langdon, the poor deceased, who has now been transferred to the afterlife. By whoever. Silently, they all trotted back through the giant sequoia forest towards the station. Dense clouds of steaming air rose between the trees, and from the earth emerged a worm that was a metre long. It wasn't a snake, as the creature displayed the elongated cylindrical body structure of a worm and no eyes, but instead minimal sensory cells at its head end and a feeding orifice that rhythmically opened and closed. Good Lord, what kind of monstrosity is that? Dr. Watson exclaimed, pointing at the creature as it quickly burrowed back into the soil. A member of the usual creepy crawlies I've already told you about, explained Claxton. Everything here is somewhat larger than on your home planet. My burial of our dear departed probably disturbed it. If the worms are already this large, I'd rather not encounter the birds here, Dr. Watson said suspiciously. One thing is certain, Holmes chimed in. Dr. Langdon's breathing tube was most certainly not cut by such a worm. I can only agree with that, Dr. Watson nodded. One doubts God's plan of creation and can spend years pondering why such evil creatures exist, without ever reaching a conclusive result. A short while later, they were all sitting harmoniously back in the conference room. Decker had summoned Dr. Maxwell and Dr. Wemzig, and was subjecting them to an angry cross-examination. I am baffled by the negligence you two have shown thus far, he scolded. You've stopped sending us research reports, you've let some of the robots rust away, and worst of all, I find it appalling that you've made no effort to investigate Dr. Langdon's murderer. Now, Dr. Maxwell protested, banging his fist on the table. I won't tolerate this tone. Firstly, there hasn't been anything noteworthy to report regarding research results in recent months. Secondly, I arranged for the robot's maintenance 10 minutes ago. And thirdly, I'm not a police officer who needs to concern himself with investigating the circumstances of my colleague's death, Dr. Wemzig modestly remarked. Besides, we didn't know that Dr. Langdon had been murdered. Claxton only informed us that he had unfortunately passed away, which made us all very sad, added Dr. Maxwell. But life must go on after all. We can't wallow in a vale of tears. There was a slight hint of irony in the sentence. And whom do you suspect of such a reprehensible act, my charming ladies? Inquired Sherlock Holmes with exquisite politeness. None of us at all, Dr. Maxwell hissed at him. We're all far too busy. What exactly was Dr. Langdon working on during the past 30 years? Decker probed. On excavations, Dr. Wemzig replied, fidgeting nervously in her chair. You see, Captain, this station was built on the ruins of an ancient native settlement. In underground passages, Dr. Langdon found the bones of giants and their relics. Surely you must know this from his reports. I haven't read those reports. That's handled by a special department, he barked irritably. And what drove him to that structure outside? Pure attention-seeking, Dr. Maxwell said heatedly. The fine gentleman was no longer content with the underground excavations and was absolutely determined to expand his research area. Who would benefit from his death? Holmes interjected. None of us, they both exclaimed in unison, then looked at each other in surprise at this unanimity and fell silent again. From what I understand, Holmes continued, Dr. Langdon applied for a transfer. Were you aware of this, ladies? Yes, Dr. Langdon wanted to leave here because, in his opinion, there was nothing interesting left to discover, Dr. Maxwell explained with a smile. That's the irony of fate, that just before his death, he found something worth investigating. I would like to take a look at his quarters, said Holmes. Perhaps we might find a clue there that could prove useful in our search for his murderer, be it male or female. I object to the feminine form of such an evil word. Dr. Maxwell became agitated and struck the table with her fist again. You shouldn't strike the table so often, Dr. Maxwell, Dr. Watson politely warned her. It might damage your delicate knuckles. Without another word, the visitors rose and left the hall, leaving behind the two bewildered ladies. Decker called for Claxton, who led them to Dr. Langdon's room. Good Lord, this is absolute chaos, Dr. Watson exclaimed, clasping her hands together. It appears someone has ransacked everything while searching for something specific. No, Dr. Langdon's private room has always looked like this, Claxton explained. He always maintained that a true genius needn't keep things tidy. That's what we're here for, Elmer chimed in. No, he forbade me and the other robots from doing that, said Claxton. Various papers lay scattered across the floor, some of which contained exact transcriptions of the cuneiform found on the structure. On the doctor's unmade bed lay some of his clothes and several brushes that archaeologists typically used to dust off excavated artifacts. His shoes stood on a desk by the window, and there were some stones on the chair. What kind of stones are those, Claxton? Decker probed. These stones come from the underground tombs of the giants, replied the polished robot. Dr. Langdon considered them very valuable, as they contain small diamonds. Indeed, Dr. Watson agreed, having taken a closer look at one of the stones. Those appear to be rough diamonds. The fact that all the stones are still here in his chamber proves to me that this couldn't have been a robbery murder, Holmes deduced. Unless there's a will. A female figure timidly knocked on the open door. Excuse me, I'm Dr. Brunswick, a cryptologist by profession, and I heard noises. With whom do I have the pleasure? Captain Decker introduced himself and his companions and observed the woman. She looked unremarkable in her grey overalls and pinned-up dark hair. With graceful movements, she began picking up some of the papers. Dr. Langdon told me shortly before his death that he had found an ancient message and wanted the script translated, she croaked in a hoarse voice. Unfortunately, I was tied up with other matters, things that aren't covered in the dust of history and don't need to be painstakingly blown clean. We're more interested in who snuffed out the poor doctor's life, Decker expressed rather colloquially. Startled, she looked at him. Oh, someone killed him? I had no idea. Sometimes I keep to myself and don't talk to anyone else here at all. There are some very peculiar customs around here indeed, Decker complained. Tell me, Dr. Brunswick, were there any relationships among the scientists that weren't quite in keeping with the research purpose of this place? No, of course not. You're dealing with purely intellectually minded people here, Captain Decker, she claimed, her voice sounding croaky again. Are you suffering from a sore throat, Dr. Brunswick? Inquired Dr. Watson with concern. I know a good home remedy for that. Onions boiled in milk. My vocal cords are strained because I usually scream in my sleep, she admitted dejectedly. My mental state isn't what it used to be after 30 years on this planet. Yes, that seems to apply to your colleagues as well, remarked Decker. Did you hear any noises from Dr. Langdon's room before we arrived? No, nobody was here after his death, she whispered. Do you think any of your colleagues could be capable of murder, Dr. Brunswick? Holmes questioned her. She nodded slowly and whispered, Dr. Snorret. What, the IT specialist? Decker sought to confirm. She nodded again and vanished with some of the labelled papers. At Decker's request, Claxton fetched Dr. Snorret, who, judging by his expression, was not at all pleased about it. What do you mean by disturbing me, Captain? He hissed, gesticulating wildly with his long arms. In his pitch-black suit, he looked like an undertaker annoyed with a customer. I must attend to the functioning of the life support systems, and I really cannot be of any use to you in solving Dr. Langdon's murder, which Claxton has just informed me about. Who could benefit from Dr. Langdon's death, Dr. Snorret? Holmes tested him. How should I know? Certainly not me, because now, unfortunately, the female staff are in the majority. And that bothers you? Wondered Dr. Watson. Of course, because these women here are sometimes so, how shall I put it? Overbearing. It starts with the smell. Dr. Funsägel, the anthropologist, wears a ghastly perfume. I have to hold my breath whenever she's nearby. Dreadful, he complained, demonstratively pinching his nose for a moment. And this Dr. Maxwell is a terrible superior. She's always finding fault. And don't get me started on… From that, I deduce that you didn't vote for her, Decker interrupted him. No, he cried out in horror. Yes, some men fear being overwhelmed by the sea of femininity, Sherlock Holmes philosophized, shaking his head. And then there's that incompetent Dr. Wemzig. It was about time that person was voted out, though sadly what follows is rarely any better. I certainly don't want to accuse anyone, but if you ask me who might have done it, I'd bet it was the stink bomb. Dr. Snorret continued to rage. You mean Dr. Funsägel, the perfumed anthropologist? Holmes probed. Indeed, because she had an argument with Dr. Langdon. As far as I know, it was about the allocation of food rations, during which they both boasted about their respective discoveries on this planet. There's no point in discussing the exact words that were used, as they were meaningless. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to my important duties. He departed with considerable haste. Well, at least someone who tells it like it is, Decker rejoiced. A man's word is his bond, but a woman needs a dictionary. At least now we have a suspect. That could just be a diversion, Holmes pointed out with a dismissive gesture. To keep us from bothering him further, he recalled an argument about food and boasting about their respective findings. Though murders have certainly occurred for far lesser reasons, I doubt that the quarrel over food combined with a superiority complex was the motive for the murder. Nevertheless, we must now interview Dr. Funsägel, Decker noted glumly. One could tell that he would rather be doing something entirely different. Then I suggest we simply follow our noses, proposed Dr. Watson. Dr. Funsägel left the building earlier to go for a walk, Claxton informed him. Follow me, gentlemen. I'll take you to the anthropologist's favourite spot, which is not far from the tower. She always strolls back and forth there, humming a merry tune, such as, must I then leave this little town, while you, my love, stay here? Yes, yes, Decker waved off irritably. We don't need to know all those details. Well, I must say, this robot has quite an extraordinary singing voice, remarked Dr. Watson. I do hope he won't have to sing a dirge any time soon, said Sherlock Holmes. Since the path to the tower was already within the cooled zone, the men didn't need to put on protective gear and followed the robot Claxton outside with Elmer. In the distance, they could make out thick ground fog. It's strange. When we arrived here about 6 hours ago, visibility was good and now suddenly there's this fog, Decker muttered. All we need now is for Claxton to start imitating a foghorn. As they drew closer, the fog dissipated, but horror took hold of the visitors, for before them lay a dead woman whose throat had evidently been slashed. Red blood had spilled over her light blue trouser suit. Dr. Watson touched her high, intellectual forehead, where dark blonde strands of hair fell across it. An intense scent of roses enveloped the gentlemen as they stood with bowed heads before the beautiful deceased. "She's still warm, which suggests the murderer struck only recently," said Dr. Watson gravely, now kneeling beside her. "They were able to escape unseen, under the cover of fog. But he or she might be stained with blood," Holmes hoped. "Elmer, hurry back to the station and meticulously check the clothing of everyone present there." Elmer dashed off, faster than any human could. "Should I bury Dr. Funsiegel as well?" inquired Claxton. "No, take the dead woman to the cold storage," Decker ordered him, and then snapped his fingers. "Blast it, we arrived just a few minutes too late." "Don't fret, Captain," Holmes reassured him. "We must accept that preventing crimes is difficult. Our task is limited to solving them, and I dare say we've made significant progress." "Oh, really? Did I miss something?" Decker said with a hint of sarcasm. "The fog," Holmes specified. "Claxton told us that he also found the dead Dr. Langdon in the fog. This leads me to believe that it cannot be a coincidence when fog appears whenever someone dies an unnatural death." "Yes, it could have been artificial fog from a smoke grenade," Decker now agreed. "In that case, a chemist would be the prime suspect." "Or a female chemist. As far as I can recall, that's what the new director, Dr. Maxwell, does," Holmes interjected spontaneously. "Oh dear," Dr. Watson worried. "If we confront her with our suspicions, she'll smash the table to pieces with her fist." Given the sad news of Dr. Funsiegel's passing and Elmer's meticulous inspection of her clothing, all remaining 10 researchers gathered in the conference room. Decker sat opposite them with a stern look. Dr. Watson and Elmer flanked him, whilst Sherlock Holmes paced restlessly back and forth. "Ladies and gentlemen," Holmes addressed them, "it appears to us that we have already identified a suspect among you. And who might that be?" The question came in a harsh tone from Dr. Maxwell. Holmes stopped, looked directly into her face and exclaimed, "You!" She was about to slam her fist on the table again, but Dr. Watson snapped, "Leave the table alone, Doctor." Irritated, she froze mid-movement, then placed her right hand flat on the table and exhaled audibly. "Would you perhaps care to justify this impertinent remark, Mr. Holmes?" "Very well," he agreed. "You are the only one among those present who benefited from Dr. Langdon's death, namely by taking over the management of the station, and as a chemist, you also possess the necessary skills to manufacture a smoke grenade which was used to escape from the scene undetected." "What nonsense!" she shouted angrily, then composed herself and continued in a strained tone. "Firstly, I didn't bribe anyone to vote for me. Secondly, manufacturing a smoke grenade isn't an insurmountable task for anyone else here. And thirdly, I had nothing against Dr. Langdon nor Dr. Funsiegel. I got along splendidly with everyone. Why don't you ask, for example, the charming Dr. Sanctus, our psychologist and experienced personnel consultant. Dr. Sanctus, a plump, grey-bearded man without a single hair on his head, tugged his grey-blue knitted jumper over his paunch and began his address. "My dear colleagues, esteemed visitors, it fills us all with unspeakable sorrow to hear that another one of us has been torn from our midst, and in such a brutal manner that I couldn't imagine anyone here capable of it. My suspicion is that something evil from the outside has infiltrated our peaceful community and wants to eliminate us one by one. Therefore, I propose our immediate departure from this hostile planet." "Rejected!" Decker roared. Holmes nodded silently before sharing his suspicion. "I cannot imagine that some evil force would have waited patiently for 30 years before suddenly deciding to strike and decimate your team. I can only agree to a departure if we can solve both murders beforehand. Has anyone else seen, heard, or noticed anything in any other way that might help us with this?" Cautiously, one of the blonde ladies raised her index finger. "Yes. My name is Dr. Lundholm, and I am a medical doctor by profession. During a routine examination, I noticed that Dr. Langdon's blood pressure readings had risen sharply just before his death. When I asked him what might be causing this, He said that he had been threatened. However, he did not tell me who had threatened him. "Why didn't you inform me of this, colleague?" Dr. Maxwell criticised her. Dr. Lundholm's cheeks turned red, matching the colour of her blouse. "I didn't think it was important. After all, elevated blood pressure and a vague statement aren't enough to warrant immediate intervention. I believe that if it had been a truly life-threatening matter, he would have reported it personally to you, or rather, to your predecessor, Dr. Wemzig." Dr. Wemzig hastily confirmed that he had not contacted her. "No, he never came to see me. I know nothing about this." On that note, Dr. Snorret contributed his part to the discussion. "I already told you that Dr. Langdon had a heated argument with Dr. Funsiegel about the food ration." "Yes, although unfortunately she is no longer in a position to comment on that," Holmes reminded them. "I'm not that stupid either," Dr. Snorret grumbled. "But before her death, she could have disposed of Dr. Langdon. And then his ghost came back to haunt her. Is that what you mean?" Dr. Maxwell sneered. "No, then someone discovered who killed him and took the law into their own hands," claimed Dr. Snorret, nodding several times to emphasise his point. He looked rather like a lizard threatening its adversary. "That's an interesting hypothesis," Holmes admitted, "though I don't agree with it. Rather, it seems to me that both murders were committed by one and the same perpetrator, be it male or female. I see you cannot be dissuaded from your far-fetched suspicion that one of us women might be capable of committing such a heinous act, Mr. Holmes." Dr. Maxwell was visibly irritated, and once again raised her fist menacingly, though she refrained from bringing it down upon the table. "Well, I at least cannot rule that out," he remarked thoughtfully. "Is there a will from the deceased?" Everyone shook their heads. Holmes pondered. "And is there something like a daily schedule here that must be followed and which could be checked for any deviations?" "Not really, Mr. Holmes," replied Dr. Meerhout, who claimed to be a physicist, a gaunt man in a beige suit that looked like pyjamas. "Everyone here has long since done as they please, without paying much attention to schedules. Flexibility is the order of the day." "Yes, the murderer seems very flexible indeed," Decker burst into the conversation. "I'm starting to lose my patience. You all appear to be hiding something from us, but my team and I will get to the bottom of this." "If possible, not today, as it's bedtime now," announced Dr. Wemzig. "We're all very tired and urgently need to get a few hours' rest." "Indeed," Dr. Maxwell concurred. "Claxton will be happy to show you to your guest rooms." Without waiting for Decker's permission, all 10 members of the research team rose and hastily made their way out of the hall, whereupon Decker, Holmes, and Dr. Watson exchanged meaningful glances. "A fine lot they are," remarked Decker, slamming his fist on the table. Dr. Watson flinched. "Please, Mr. Decker, spare the tabletop and my nerves. The entire atmosphere here is quite tense enough as it is." Claxton assigned the visitors their rooms, which were conveniently situated next to one another. All guest rooms stood out from the stuffy corridors leading to them with their clinical cleanliness and fresh, lemony scent. "Shall I serve you supper?" inquired the polished robot. "No, a nightcap with a bit of alcohol in it will do for me," Holmes instructed him. "You'll find that in the well-stocked minibar in the corner by the window, Mr. Holmes," Claxton announced, and withdrew discreetly. In each guest room there was a steel bed made up with white bedding, upon which lay a red and white striped pyjamas, a shower plus toilet, and in the corner the aforementioned minibar, which was stocked with small bottles and snacks. Holmes selected a small bottle of brandy which he enjoyed after changing. After the negative events, any chance of a peaceful night's sleep was naturally gone. None of the 3 men dared to close even a single eye. Only after several hours did all 3 fall into a deep slumber, haunted by hazy dreams of corpses in the fog. In Dr. Watson's room, there suddenly came a loud banging noise. He awoke in terror and leapt out of bed. His pyjamas were soaking wet. "Hello, is anybody there?" he asked timidly, switching on the light, which initially blinded him before his eyes adjusted to it. "Hello?" No response. "Holmes, he called out, trying to open his bedroom door, but it was jammed. Desperately, he shook it. "Hello, can anyone hear me? I'm locked in." Nobody seemed to hear him, so he padded barefoot to the window, where the blackness of space threatened to engulf him. His attempts to open the window proved just as unsuccessful as with the door. Again, a loud rumbling sound echoed, seemingly coming from the shower. Cautiously, he approached the shower cubicle and froze. From the drain, a worm was writhing, snapping at him with its tooth-lined feeding orifice. "No!" he protested loudly. "A normal worm doesn't even have teeth." "Ah!" he exclaimed, sitting bolt upright in bed, drenched in sweat. It had all been just a dream. He hopped out of bed, switched on the light, and inspected the shower, which was naturally completely worm-free, allowing him to have a quick shower and dry his sweaty pyjamas using the hairdryer hanging beside the shower. Afterwards, he got back into bed. Right then, here's hoping for a spot of nightmare-free sleep. In the adjacent room, Decker was snoring and sleeping the sleep of the just, his dreams revolving around an upcoming promotion to Space Fleet Commander, and soon a blissful smile settled upon his lips. In contrast, Sherlock Holmes was awakened from his horror dream about someone armed with a long knife by loud banging, and he asked drowsily, "Who's there?" "It's Claxton here, Mr. Holmes. Claxton, the faithful robot, at your service. Dr. Brunswick sent me to fetch you. She would like you to come to her straight away. Please do hurry." "Just what I needed," he growled, rolling out of bed, quickly slipping into his shoes, throwing on his suit jacket, and hurrying after the robot in his red and white striped pyjamas. "What's happened?" "Dr. Brunswick appears to be experiencing great fear," Claxton explained. "I have a built-in sensor that translates human emotions into numbers. Her fear is at 12, the highest level." Upon reaching the cryptologist, who received him in a pink nightgown, Holmes could tell at a glance that she indeed appeared to be terribly frightened. On the verge of pleading, she whispered to him as he entered her room, "Mr. Holmes, I'm the next victim." "Do calm down, my dear," he placated her. "Tell me what makes you so certain." After locking the door to the room, she began to tell him. "I managed to translate the text from the stone book. Here." Excitedly, she pointed at her computer screen, which stood next to her unused bed. On it, the cuneiform characters had been deciphered into readable text. "This symbol, which I initially thought was a sun, represents a gemstone," she explained. "A diamond, I presume." He recalled the stones with the rough diamonds in Dr. Langdon's room. "Precisely. The computer has been invaluable in helping with the translation," she admitted. It revealed that the symbol means energy chunk. Furthermore, I realized that these gems also functioned as a power source. Look, the text is a list of calorific values, where one stone equals 10,000 units. I don't suppose it's a conversion into horsepower or kilowatts or newtons. It must be a common designation for power output back then. "That's all well and good, but what about it frightens you so much?" Holmes wanted to know. "You're trembling like a leaf." "The point is," she whispered mysteriously, "that the computer is accessible to everyone. This means that any input becomes visible on all other computers. Therefore, we have no secrets here. The murderer can read along. I hadn't even thought about that until I realized that the reason for Dr. Langdon's murder could be his discovery. And then the fear started creeping up inside me. And what's more, I've already received an invitation. Here!" On the computer screen, Holmes could read, "Hello, Dr. Brunswick. Meet me in an hour at the giant reading book. I need to speak with you alone. Until then, Dr. Maxwell?" "Dr. Maxwell is inviting you to a meeting at such an early hour," Holmes marvelled. "I don't believe Dr. Maxwell is the sender. Someone else is using her name and lying in wait for me. I'm not going there. No, Mr. Holmes, never." "Of course not, but we need to act quickly if we want to catch the murderer red-handed," he knew precisely. "Tell me, Dr. Brunswick, you do have a heat protective suit, don't you?" Yes, but thanks to the cooling system upgrade it's no longer necessary. Besides, I'm not going there in that suit either." "You don't have to. Holmes reassured the anxious doctor. "Just show me your suit." With trembling hands, she took out a light brown suit with a full visor and breathing tube from her wardrobe. "Very good. I noticed that the robots here come in different sizes, and by my estimation, one of them must be about 5 foot 7 inches tall, just like you, Dr. Brunswick." "Yes, you want to put my suit on the robot?" Holmes nodded eagerly. "You've got it, my dear. Whoever is lurking there will assume it's you in the suit." "That's a brilliant idea," she rejoiced, visibly relieved. "Claxton!" The robot knocked on the door. "You'll have to unlock it, Dr. Brunswick, otherwise I cannot enter." She quickly unlocked her door and ordered, "Fetch Dixon, but don't tell anyone about it." Claxton obediently set off at once, whilst Dr. Brunswick promptly locked her door again. "I'm well aware that a robot can transmit its impressions to the computer," Holmes revealed to her. "All we need to do now is put the suit on the robot and link its camera eyes to your computer. Then we'll see exactly who is waiting for you at the structure." "Oh, Mr. Holmes, I'm so relieved to have gained you as an ally. By now, everyone at the station has become highly suspicious to me," she whispered. After they had both hurriedly dressed and instructed Dixon, Holmes withdrew to his room to change clothes himself and inform Dr. Watson and Decker about the plan. Eventually, they all met again in Dr. Brunswick's room, where she was still in her pink nightgown, but with noticeably less fear as she waited in front of her computer screen for the things the robot would transmit from its excursion. "There he goes, wandering through the forest," Decker commented impatiently. "Now it's getting exciting. He'll soon reach the clearing. Soon we shall know who has been committing these ruthless murders," Dr. Watson rejoiced. "I suspected as much," Holmes whispered breathlessly. "The fog is coming. The visibility is getting poor." "Crack! Crack!" came a loud noise from the computer and the image wobbled. "A damage report from Dixon," Dr. Brunswick screeched. "Someone has damaged his rear end." "I assume he was brutally stabbed in the back," Holmes feared. "Quick, give the instruction for him to turn around and run back in the direction he came from, Dr. Brunswick." She frantically typed on her computer keyboard, and the image became clearer. The fog dispersed, and a figure in a green camouflage suit appeared in front of the robot, rapidly moving away from it and heading back towards the station. "Who on earth is that?" Decker asked, more to himself. "Looks rather chubby." "The answer is already dawning on me," Holmes triumphed confidently. "Who else has such a portly waistline as our fugitive? Why, none other than the psychologist and HR consultant Dr. Sanctus." "Yes, that's him. Now I recognise him too," exclaimed Dr. Brunswick. "What a scoundrel." "Come along, everyone. We'll prepare a wonderful reception for him," Decker announced. And just as Dr. Sanctus was about to enter the station, he was greeted by the group who had already identified him as the perpetrator on the computer screen. "Why did you want to kill me?" shrieked Dr. Brunswick, still in her pink nightgown. Dr. Sanctus, who was slightly out of breath, looked around in confusion before making a half-hearted confession. "The long years of isolation from home have turned me into a different person. With the discovery of a new energy source, I hoped for a new life, but unfortunately, I had to eliminate Dr. Langdon first." "Because you wanted all the glory for yourself," completed Dr. Watson, and Sherlock Holmes interrogated him. "But why did you slit Dr. Funsegel's throat?" "After the argument with Dr. Langdon, she knew about his discovery, so I'm afraid I had to send her to Hades as well," he shrugged. "The robot Elmer found no blood on my clothes, as my camouflage suit can repel all liquids due to the Lotus effect. Ya! He burst into maniacal laughter. "Ha ha ha ha! Blimey!" Decker sighed. "Now he's playing the madman, and I bet a ton of diamonds I'll have to take him aboard and deliver him to the asylum on Beta Tropoli 113. Still better than having to keep digging graves for the researchers here," Holmes said contentedly, whilst rubbing his hands together with satisfaction. "Right then, I'll just fetch the remaining bottles from the minibar and we can scarper off." You were listening to Pomej, The Fog Murderer of Gliese 1214b, Sherlock Holmes, The Galactic Cases, Episode 7, based on the characters created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A Go Audio production,